Alright friends, I got another video here, and I want to talk about something that is extremely important to me. It has been for a long time in regards to so-called remote viewing, and that is the threshold of awareness. A couple of different terms for it. I think threshold of awareness is a pretty good one. Subliminal barrier, that's another one. That's another good one. I like that one. But here I had to look back in my YouTube history, my video log here of my YouTube, to find out when I started to really focus on it as far as making videos about it. And this is the oldest one here, November 18, 2014, where I think this is the first video where I was talking about it and focusing on it, doing sessions specifically in search of style videos, where meaning that I am in search of the threshold of my threshold of awareness. I am in search of my subliminal barrier. And the reason why is because it's just a topic that is, in my opinion, very loosely or lightly addressed in regards to remote viewing. And for me, it should be at the very top of the list of important things to address in regards to the experience of remote viewing. Because the threshold of awareness, or the subliminal barrier, or the lemon, as it's also termed, is that point, that line, so to speak, a theoretical line where a perception pops through, peeks through that, makes its way through that, and now you become aware of a perception. And that experience right there, that one, that theoretical line, and that stimulus, so to speak, pops up into your awareness, seemingly from nowhere, and you're just sitting there waiting for it. That's what I did. I wanted to find my own threshold of awareness. I wanted to find my subliminal barrier. And how did I do it? I did it the same way I found all the rest of the things I've been looking for in remote viewing. I turned to remote viewing itself. Not remote viewing, where is the threshold of awareness? No, that's ridiculous. No, I used what I call anything targets under blind conditions, do the remote viewing, and then when I feel a remote viewing, when I'm getting the qualities that a remote viewing is taking place, then I'm looking at my own mind and my own processes. But with my exploration of the threshold of awareness, or what I call in search of, it was okay. I have something to remote view. There's a blind target there, quote unquote. I'm gonna stand at the board. I got that ID and everything, and I'm waiting. My intention is that I'm going to remote view that, and I'm waiting for a perception. My mind is clear mind, quiet mind, that I've developed over hundreds of hours in sensory deprivation and other work to clear my mind, so I could be aware of very subtle impressions that are taking place at hopefully just below or just over the threshold of my awareness. So I turned my attention to that, right to that. I want to perceive when that stimulus, quote unquote, pokes itself above the threshold of my awareness. That's how I'm going to find the threshold of awareness, my own threshold. And I did tons of videos about it. They didn't get too many views here. A couple of hundred views, but this is funny. Remote viewing, Antarctica UFO base. Look at that, 34,000 views. But the important stuff, like, that one did pretty good. But the important stuff, like stimulus threshold and the experience of remote viewing, 581 views. That's just I learned that very early on, that what people were actually interested in regards to remote viewing. It's these three letters right here are a big main one. Not the important stuff. The important stuff is what's taking place. That's what, at least that's what became important to me. So I looked at the threshold. I studied my own threshold. That's what I did. Let's look at some of these definitions. Subliminal stimuli. Subliminal threshold refers to the level at which a stimulus is presented below a person's conscious awareness, meaning they cannot perceive it. This threshold can be measured through various methods, such as forced choice procedures. I don't even know what that means. I know how I did it, but this is how they define it. The threshold of awareness in the mind refers to the point at which unconscious thoughts and feelings become conscious. That I do agree with. Allowing for greater self-awareness and personal growth, I agree with that too. But as I studied the threshold of awareness, my own subliminal barrier, I began to look at it a couple different ways. One of the ways that I looked at it was the possibility that the subliminal barrier, or the threshold of awareness, however we want to term it, that it might be an electromagnetic field in the brain that certain impressions or thoughts or perceptions have to make their way through in order to make it to conscious awareness. That was one thing I thought about, and I began to look at it in terms of, why would that be? Why would we have one? Why would we have one? And I spent a lot of time contemplating that. Why would we have a barrier that separates our everyday awareness from all this other stuff going on below the threshold of awareness, where all the big time stuff is available? I mean, who we are, quote unquote, psychic impressions, knowledge, access to great depths of understanding, access to deep, high level comprehension, all of that kind of stuff. I began to wonder, why would we have a barrier between our everyday awareness and all of that other stuff? And I began to look at it in terms of what's below the threshold of our awareness. Our geniuses. Who are we below the threshold of awareness? We're geniuses. All humanity is. Humans are. We're geniuses. And our genius is right under the threshold of our awareness. And that maybe some people, their threshold of awareness is maybe a little bit easier accessed, or maybe a little bit thinner, and they have greater access to all the rest of the amazing things that take place in our own consciousness. I began to contemplate, look at it that way. Another way that I look at it is in terms of the amount of neural activity in certain parts of the brain that are required for a thought or a perception for us to become aware of it. Meaning that if a handful of neurons are firing, one neuron is firing, or a very, very small neural network is firing, it may not be enough activity to enough power to make it into our awareness. I began to look at it that way as well. That maybe where the remote viewing was taking place, in my opinion, in the midbrain and the brain stem, if that is the case, then maybe we have to go through so much process of remote viewing in order to build the neural activity to the amount that it would become available to and through the threshold of awareness. That was another theory that I looked at very strongly and carried it over into even what I'm doing now, where in the previous video, where the system that I'm working on is designed not only just to showcase a third, what I call brain type, with haptic perception, dimensional sensations, stereognosis type of processing of these perceptions, as opposed to aphantasia-esque or hyperphantasia-esque, but to look at it in terms of if the acquisition of the range of time and space, the quote-unquote target, is acquired in the brainstem or the midbrain, in those areas that are more prone to autonomic processing, that there may not be enough neural activity to warrant that experience to make it to and through the threshold of our awareness. That was a theory that I had, and I played around with that for a long time. I put that to the test hundreds and hundreds of times with hundreds of experiments, of remote viewing experiments, to get to the point now where I'm working in my system. And the goal of that is to acquire and begin the translation process, the decoding process, and the remote viewing quote-unquote process quickly. And how? By focusing on it, building neural pathways, so to speak, to it, willing it to be the case. And I'm getting results. But as far as an example, here's an example, kind of what I'm talking about. Okay, here's a just random, what I call anything target. And like I said, it doesn't matter to me what the quote-unquote target is. I'm only looking for dimensional sensations. I'm looking for something to make its way to the threshold of my awareness. And here's one. Let me go back here so we can see. I know I have something here. Now I have to bring my awareness to the threshold. Something's there. Something's there. Something's happening. Something has made its way. So we can look at that as right about 15, 16 seconds into the process, and a perception is coming through. And the perception dimensionally is vertical, something with vertical lines. Like, okay. And it's a structure. It's not some natural thing. It's a structure. Now in this process, I turn to the ideograph process, because that is a completely different process. The ideograph, I am turning to my nervous system to give me indicators. But I didn't want to do that in this exercise. This exercise, I wanted to focus on the threshold of my awareness for a perception, either dimensionally or other, to show itself, and there it is in the 15 to 16 second mark. There it comes through. Then I turn to my ideograph. Now I'm focusing on areas of my brain specifically. A lot of focus here. Getting some pattern completions here that I have to objectify. Buddha statue. Pattern complete meaning my memory system in my CA3 region associated memory completed it, and I recognize that, so I label it. So here I'm going through dimensionally experiencing it dimensionally, and it's some lines of tall vertical things here. And that's good. That's exactly what I want to experience. Another pattern complete of a church. Now I have full dimensional sensations taking place. Because now other parts of my brain and nervous system are beginning to process the information. This is shape form here, so there's a lot of vertical lines here. I'm not looking to label anything, I'm just looking for that dimensionality here. And I can look at it and say, yeah, I get it, yeah. I get it, and that's all that I needed. That's all I'm looking for. But the primary thing of interest is right here. Right there. There. There it is. There it is. It has entered, it has gone to and through the threshold of my awareness. That is, in my opinion, one of the most important elements of the process of remote viewing, is to understand. I mean, I had people, I remember when I put those videos out, people would argue with me, there's no threshold of awareness. It doesn't exist, or it only exists because you're saying it does. And no, that's not true. That's not true. You'd have to work some remote viewing sessions to really understand what I'm saying. And I don't mean one, I mean like 100. Work a couple of hundred, and you'll know what I'm talking about. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You may not understand it, but you'll have to go back and watch my videos to understand it a little bit better. But you have to experience it. You have to experience it. But anyway, it's a quick video. Something that's on my mind right now, kind of going back into the history here of my pursuit of my own subliminal barrier, and using what I call quote-unquote anything targets to locate and to work with my own threshold of awareness, which led me to the experience of understanding that I could use curiosity, another part of the mental experience. One of the greatest gifts that we have as human beings is the experience of curiosity, and I found that I could use curiosity to follow that stimulus back below the threshold of awareness, because what I would experience is a perception, an awareness of a perception, and it might go back, dip down below the threshold. And so what do you do then? Wait for it to come back? I found that curiosity, and I called it curiosity tunnels the threshold, that I would use my curiosity to follow that down below the threshold, and go and chase it down, like as if I was diving into an ocean or something like that, as a mental image. But I was using curiosity to tunnel the threshold of my awareness, to keep the experience of remote viewing going, and not find myself being waiting for the threshold of my awareness to give me something. No, I wanted to be able to breach it. I want to go through it. Curiosity was the experience that I found that would allow for that to happen in a lot of circumstances. Not every single time, Not every single time. Sometimes remote viewing doesn't happen, or isn't happening. But when it happens, it happens. But anyway, hope you find that interesting. Many more to come.